All right. So this is all on the record now. And this is ASC Sessions Coach Curious for those that might be interested in learning more about what's involved in being a coach for Alameda Soccer Club. My name is Bjorn Stromsness. I am a coach myself. I coached the 2013 boys white team on the competitive side. And then we have two other coaches, David Johnson, who was our coach of the year last year, right? And we have Kris Hele too, who I know I think we called you out in a newsletter, right? And both of you had great things that were said about you in the surveys about the job that you've done as coaches. So we're really here to learn from you and to share your experiences and to help convince Yana that it's not such a high bar to be involved as a coach. And so I'm going to start off by asking Kris. Kris, what is it that got you involved in coaching at ASC?
Well, I have two kids. I have a son who played in ASC for a few years, but I had a younger kid, so I wasn't stepping up to coach. But when my daughter was 5, and ready to start, my husband and I are both soccer players and former soccer players for many years. But I thought it was particularly important for my daughter and her peers to have a female coach. So I think the gender equity piece is really strong for me. It's a personal passion. It's a professional passion. When I can, I do some research and things like that. So I really wanted to step up. I wanted these young kids, and it was co-ed at the time. The U6 league is co-ed. I thought it was really important for them to see really early on, to have a strong female role model, to see someone in that role playing the game. So I think that was probably key. And just to see if my kid would like soccer. And it's great, she does. So we missed a year for COVID, and then I've done now 3 fall seasons. And I'm about to do my first spring season coming up.
Great. And David, how about you? What got you into coaching at ASC?
My son is interested in playing soccer. My daughter enjoys it too, but my son was a little bit more competitive. And then looking into the local clubs, I feel that outdoor soccer on a grass turf is better than the artificial turf. Researching Alameda Soccer Club, I saw the need for coaches. I knew I had a foundation where I could help, and so that was kind of like the start of it. And I just really wanted that quality time to coach my son and not be a father for a few hours a week, and kind of like have that divide of like, hey, I'm here to coach you now, and I'm not going to be the strict dad that I'm known for. And then I just I started as an assistant coach in my first year. Learned from that and moved on, and just decided to volunteer as the head coach, and just really enjoyed seeing the development of the kids and the encouragement that they bring out on the grass and the turf.
And for myself, I think that my wife convinced me that this was something I should do probably after there was one of those emails that went out that said, if we don't get more coaches, we're not going to have as many teams.
Yeah, I read that one too.
Right, which is a really common message that we tend to send out at the end of rec registration. Because I know that we had kids that we turned away last season because we ended up not having enough coaches. So oftentimes it is, a parent stepping up that's the difference between a kid having a season and not having a season. So one of the barriers that can exist for parents who are considering coaching is, what if I haven't played before? And how would Kris, how would you address that if you have a parent that says, well, I haven't played before, can I be a coach for this team?
Yes, I've actually had this conversation with people to say, I think, especially at the young ages, but even well into the years of rec soccer, that I actually think the sort of interesting, liking kids and wanting to really focusing on the youth development piece, I think is primary. I think that's a primary part of my role. And you do not need soccer training to do that. So I think, caring about kids, wanting to see them kind of invest in their growth and their enjoyment on the field, to me has been paramount. And that's kind of how I structure even the drills I do. I have a lot of soccer experience, but you can look up drills, you can learn techniques as an adult, you can learn soccer, but it's very hard, I think, to replace.
There's no video, but if you want to show your face, you can show your face.
Replace or like kind of fake that interest in kids and wanting to see them grow. So I would definitely encourage someone who just thinks that they want to make a difference for kids, that it's a great opportunity to do that, and then call on the support of other coaches, of other resources that were offered, and Google searches and videos. There's like a lot out there right now that will help with the soccer fundamentals.
Yeah, meet them. So one of the things, speaking of resources, David has like a whole document that he's put together about how to play positions and the sort of game concepts. Have you found that useful for your kids? Is that something, it sounds like you have been willing to share that. That's something that you'd be willing to share to other.
Oh, absolutely. I think it really helped the kids and not only the kids, but the parents that don't understand the sport of soccer, because everyone thinks it's just cleats, shin guards, and a ball and chase it. But there's so much strategy to the game. It can almost be as strategic as American football when it comes down to it. And, for parents that haven't coached, I think it is really about just letting the kids get out there, run around, have some fun, get as much touches on a ball as possible, and just understand the basic fundamentals of the game. Whether it's just 3 or 4 or 5 of the basic fundamentals can go a really long way with coaching it. And the resources out there, we have the University of YouTube where there's a plethora of information, but at the same time, I think, the approach is like the kids are in school all day listening to teachers, and when they're out there playing soccer, they should just be moving and touching a ball the whole time and having fun with their friends, and, not taking it, we're not, maybe they're not going to be Olympians one day, but, right now they're kids, and let them enjoy the game and the fresh air.
Yeah. Kris, walk us through a season. How does it start? What's your experience coaching throughout the season?
In what way do you mean? Like just how I approach kind of the things that I do to structure?
Yeah. How does your team come together? What do you do from those first practices? What are those first game experiences like as a coach, as opposed to someone who's been sitting on the sideline? How does it change your perspective as a coach?
Yeah. I think for me, and this is maybe a little bit just personal, what I need, but also what I think is successful is like preparation. And I go pretty heavy on the communication up front. So I really, I try to structure things or like set the tone early on. And so I think that, that really entails communicating with the parents as positively as I can to share information. It's having a parent meeting on that first practice. Yeah. It's pretty casual, but like hopefully someone else can let the kids run around while I kind of share with the parents, here's what I know, here's what they need, reinforcing we only want positive comments from the sideline, like really set the expectations of how this is going to work. And I do the same with the kids, I think, and try not to do it in like here's the list and here's the agenda, but plan the practices. I have like the same structure to all my practices, and that's like I start with dynamic stretching. So they're doing a little bit of movement that they're going to use. And hopefully we talk about avoiding injury and how we need to move our bodies. I do a little bit of a check-in, like how did your day go at school? Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs medium. I talk about a couple of things we're going to work on. I structure the practice so I maybe teach one new skill. And maybe it's not new, but it's like a new skill or a new drill. And I find that that's about the limit of what you want for new, and then I'll repeat some games that we've played before, games/drills, but more making them seem fun, and then ending with a scrimmage. And so the kids kind of, that's the format. Again, they know what to expect. They know what's expected of them. And then we would do the challenger coach, so the professional coach practice, which then is planned for us, but it's really to be there, keep the positivity up, keep the attention on the kids, and then preparing for the games. And so again, this is like what I focus on is where can I help these kids grow? How can I ensure pretty close to equal playing time? That is important. Rotating who's in goalkeeper, rotating who's starting the game and who's sitting on the sideline, so that really every kid is feeling included and valued. And so I do put in a lot of time. Like, that does take preparation and time, but I find that there's a big payoff from that in terms of parents knowing what's what, and the team is sort of actually feeling like a team, that holding that container for the team to then have fun in that kind of that space that we create.
And I'll say, even on the competitive side, right, the emphasis is still on equal playing time. It's still on rotating positions. This is me planning every substitution I'm going to make in a game. And it also helps keep me honest. If we're down a goal and there's 5 minutes left, I'm not like, hey, Colin, I want you to go in. I'm not doing that. If Colin isn't on here, he's not going in, even if he's my best player, because I want the kids that are on the field to also experience that challenge. Right. And so that's even at the competitive level. I'm still trying to get 50% playing time. I'm still trying to move kids in different positions. And I spend a lot of time doing that too. That's why it's really helpful when you have an assistant coach, because they can help manage the clock for you.
Right.
But not everyone has that. David, one of the questions that maybe I'm still struggling with from time to time: how do you coach your own kid?
I treat him as an equal. There's absolutely no favoritism. If he gets kind of lumped up or starts complaining about, so and so said this or said that, it's like, hey, you're an equal on this team, and I'm not gonna, cater to your individual need. And I'm gonna treat you with the same, rules and fairness and discipline as the other 12 to 14 people on this team. And it's hard at first, no doubt, but it works. And and that's just it. And for those several hours a week where I am the coach, I am not a father during those times. And it's very clear. It's like, he has to call me coach and not dad during that time. And I have to be aware of my, myself and not like favoring him over the other players. And it, the first season we played, it was a little bit of a struggle. And, now that habit's developed, I think we have a mutual understanding. And then I also, have to be respectful. Like, when practice is over, coach has to stop and talking about the sport and the practice and any type of coaching critiques, it stops the minute we get in our vehicle to drive home. And if he wants to talk about practice and soccer, that it's up to him. But, when we're at home having dinner and whatnot, there's no talk of soccer.
Yeah. Kris, I think that's such an important question. I want to hear your response to. How do you coach your own child?
Yeah, it's interesting so far. I think I've just been kind of lucky. I mean, she's 8 and I'm still fun, and I don't want to say cool, because I don't think it's the right word, but like it's still like cool enough to have your parent there. And so I haven't yet faced, but I anticipate that there will be a time when that may change. And I think had I coached my other kid, I would have had maybe some challenges even by this age, just because of their temperament. But a lot of what David said, I mean, I think when you're being fair out there with everyone, it's just sort of like, that's the tone. I'm being fair. Everyone's taking their turn on the sideline. Everyone's doing this. There's, I haven't actually like forced the calling the coach thing yet. I think she still calls me mom, and I'm sure I like a little honey slips out here and there, or she'll come for a hug on the sideline. And frankly, if the kid did that and came in for a side hug, like I would probably do that for them too. So I think mostly it just helps. Yes, I'm coach. We're all doing something together. There's no special treatment, or I work hard for that, but also work hard not to be harsher. Because I think sometimes parents might, or someone might perceive that they're actually going to get advantages of being a coach's kid. And I actually see sometimes the opposite, right? That is not often the case. So to try to balance that you don't have higher expectations for your kid than what they are capable of as an individual, as a player, given their age. I guess the other thing that I don't think I heard David say, that I was lucky to have 2 assistant coaches this last season, and I've had 1 assistant coach in previous seasons, but that's the one that I'll be like, can you be watching her during the game? And can you say at the end what you saw that was good? And I'll do that for your kid. So it's more of like that praise or that noticing is coming from different angles. So it doesn't feel quite so personal or maybe fraught with a parent-child relationship.
I've had some problems with that being too, like, you know, my son not understanding where coach starts and stops and where dad starts and stops. And I found it one of the things that's been interesting for me in my, I don't know, does it, when I say coaching journey, does that sound too pretentious?
A little bit. That's okay.
A little bit, yeah. One of the things that has been really interesting for me is just, it's been a big learning experience for me. Yeah. You know, I keep learning new things about interpersonal relationships, about kids, about dynamics, all of that. One of the things I learned at the end of last season was my son has a lot more fun in practices the less I say his name. So I know sometimes if he's not doing something great or he's standing still in the field, I don't need to tell him to move. You know what? I'm going to focus on some of the other kids now. And he's going to get in the car when I ask him if he had a good time at practice. He's going to say yes. And if I am like, you know, move, you know, hey, why aren't you doing this? I need to turn my attention somewhere else. And I don't know, there's a lot of lessons I probably have learned several times. And, you know, this is one of them. Like the more I make it, you know, your eye goes to your kid normally. It's a natural thing to do, but the more I can move it to think about team and sort of let him make his own mistakes without dad coach like hanging over him, like the more fun he has. And that's what it's about. Have any of you experienced it feels right now what I'm seeing in this is in the sort of the U10, U11 area, that there is a tension between soccer and screens. Are any of you seeing that in your kids? I'm curious.
Screens meaning what? Like
screen time. Like, oh, I don't want to go to the game because I want to play Minecraft or something like that.
No, I haven't experienced that yet. But I think the way we manage screen time, you know, is pretty regimented in this house. It's, you know, 30 minutes on, hour and a half off, no exceptions.
Yeah.
And screen time is a privilege, not a right.
Yeah. Just that's an aside, really. I've seen it not only in my own kid a little bit, but also in some of the other kids in his age. Kris, what's the most fun part of being a youth soccer coach?
Well, I don't know, there are a lot of things. I genuinely like actually playing with the kids. So it's fun for me. I sort of gave up soccer for myself just because of injuries and having kids. It made it much harder to put in the time and have my own play. So it's sort of like reinvigorated my love for the game. just to do, I'm not doing all the drills with them, but to demonstrate a little, or to jump in and do a little scrimmage when one team is down a player or something. It's fun for me to play. I also think it's useful because it kind of demonstrates the joy a bit too, of like, this is a fun thing. This is something I do for fun. This is something adults do for fun. It's entertaining, and I like playing with you kids. So I'm enjoying that, but like sort of from a more cerebral or adult level, it's like actually seeing the growth of the kids, I think is just that's very joyful for me. I've been lucky and worked hard to have kids come back, and I've had a crew of 6 or 7 kids that have come back for multiple seasons. And so especially for them, I can see the growth, not just that comes with age and their stage of life and coordination, but even for the newbies to see how they change. It's really cool to see that happen, to feel like you're a part of it. And just, yeah, I think enjoying that aspect of being around kids, and they're happy and they're having fun and they're playing, and all those things give me a lift, because it's so much different than being at my desk, even for a job that I like. It's getting me outside, it's doing all those things. So I feel I definitely have even when it's a hard day and I'm like rushing to get there and this feels like a lot to take on sometimes, I always end the practice or the game kind of better than I started, just in terms of my mood and all that, which is pretty great.
Yeah. David, how about for you?
I enjoy seeing the kids, how they develop over the seasons and now over the years. And they go from the basics and all of a sudden they start growing and learn how to communicate to each other. And I really like seeing when they become interactive and start, saying, hey, that was a foul, or, your hand accidentally touched the ball. And then they're talking strategy amongst each other, when it's like they're like, oh, there's 5 minutes left. Let's try and let's try and burn down the time, and just seeing their mental development and the sportsmanship development of, even if they lose, they're smiling, they're saying good game to everybody, GG. And that is just great in itself, just the overall, pride of being a team and having, the same kids that they see every spring and fall. And just the growth of the camaraderie amongst the kids is fantastic. And, like, I feel like a season is successful when you're halfway through the season and you don't really have to actively coach. You're just kind of there observing them, and they're kind of self-managing, their time at practice, and they're understanding how to play and how to talk to each other at the games. And the less I talk at a game or at practice, I feel like that's when I'm winning, because they know what to do and they know how to be their self-discipline is just fantastic. That's the joy I find in it.
There was I think it was last spring. There were a couple of games where there was one game where my team played fantastic. We didn't win, but there was just a lot of effort. They were doing a lot of things really well. And the next game, they just were absent. It was just the little things that they were doing the day before, they were not doing. The effort wasn't there. The commitment was just gone. And I was grumpy afterwards, pointed out by my wife. And the kids were fine 5 minutes later. Yeah. They stayed and kicked, played on the field for like an hour. They had moved on completely. I, on the other hand, hadn't. And I asked some coach friends of mine who have a lot more experience than I do. Like, what do you do after a game like that? What do you do when you've experienced a heavy defeat and the effort isn't there, and and there's a lot to be disappointed about? And sort of universally, the answer that I got was, you don't do anything, you move on. Game's over. You talk about what was positive and you move on, and that's it. And and this was, you know, one of those things that I had to learn. I call it Ted Lassoing it, where, you know, like, how positive can I be about this? You know, we're going to talk about, you know, what we learned. We're going to talk about the things we did right. And we're going to talk about the things that we can work on, but in a positive way. What do you do when you have a heavy defeat? What's your game plan or strategy after one of those? Assuming that, as you know, you're unlucky enough to have those sorts of experiences, which many of us will.
Yeah, I mean, we had a couple games where, you know, we got blown out of the water, and, you know, for several reasons. The one thing I don't do is talk about any of the failures that happened on the pitch. The main thing that I've always done is I make sure the very first day at practice, I emphasize, you know, hey guys, this was your best defensive play of the game. And I emphasize, like, this is what I appreciated about your teamwork and your sportsmanship. And I emphasize, and then the last thing I emphasize about is the offensive side of the game. And no matter what happens, you know, on whether it's the first practice of the week, it's like, you know, if you guys played good as a team, everyone's going to get, you know, a Gatorade 0. Right. And it's like, just because you showed up, you did your best, and you didn't get upset because you lost. So that's winning.
Yeah.
And and then moving forward, you know, just like you figure out, like, were they swarming the ball? Were they passing the ball? You know, you kind of strategize your practices around what needs to be done, and you just make sure it's in a good way, because, you know, they're just there to hang out and have fun and try and kick a ball in the net at the end of the day. And it's not about the statistics or where they end up in the league. You know, they've got a few more, you know, anything like U13 and under, they're just there to have fun and kick a ball and try and get it in the net. Anything else doesn't matter.
Yeah. Kris, how about you?
Yeah, I think just remembering that no matter what is happening in the game, good or bad, or what the result is, that the kids and the parents are watching us. And so our reactions matter. My team had we were like 7-0. We just kept winning. I kept thinking we were going to have a tie or a loss, and we didn't. We just, you know, undefeated. But with every one, it was like, uh-oh, you know, I want them to learn from a loss. And so I was waiting. We had one. It wasn't a heavy loss though, because we played really well. And so the girls were pretty upbeat, but I just made sure afterwards that, like, I was grinning, and I would just like, congratulations, what a great loss. And they laughed, like, it broke the tension. They laughed and were like, what? You know, and I would kind of do that other times, like, oh, what an awesome mistake you just made. Like, look at what you tried. It didn't work, but now we know. And I think just sort of approaching that with some levity, to normalize, and also just like talking to the team, like, this happens to every team. There are just some days that aren't our days. Look how well that team played. Look how hard you tried. That all helps to just be like, it's okay. I'm okay. I'm not disappointed in you.
Yeah.
I'm happy you tried these things. Like, and yeah, I think they moved on right away. I do have a few players that I would say are more competitive and take some things harder, and actually probably take personal bad days harder, maybe even than the team result. And so I go talk to them usually afterwards. Being a competitive person, I can put that aside as a coach, actually. But being a competitive person and player, I also normalize that for them, of like, I know you really wanted to win. I know it was really important to you, and you're disappointed, and that is okay. I love your competitive spirit. I love that you're always going to try your very hardest. And, you know, just letting them know too, that it's okay, because some kids will breeze past it and it doesn't matter 5 minutes later. Others will take that home and kind of be sullen all day. Yeah. So I try to, if I can, connect with those players in a slightly different way that might feel more encouraging to them, and like tell them, bring that energy back next time. You know how it felt? It didn't feel good. What can you bring next time to come out and be fierce and strong and try your best So
Yeah. You know, and sometimes you have a team that just is going to have a hard season. And sometimes, you know, you're going to lose almost every game, if not every game. And even in those situations, you can move the goalposts. You know, what is the goal of the game? Well, the goal of the game is I want to see if we can take on three players in the offensive end. I want to see if we can make 5 skill moves during the game. I want to see if we can, you know, keep from doing a foot fault on a throw in. That's what our goal is for the game. You can have goals for the game that aren't the final score, and you can celebrate those wins. And, you know, sometimes that's what you need to do. You know, that can be very helpful, especially if it's tied to practice, right? If you've set out an intention for the practice, this is what we're going to work on today. We're going to work on, you know, taking players on. We're going to work on to see if we can do a skill move. And then you do that in your 2 practices, and then you get to the game. And you're like, all right, here's what our goal is for the game. Our goal is to make 5 skill moves during the game. Let's see if we can do that. And that, you know, depending on the team, that may be the difference between feeling like you have a successful season and not, if you can find those little victories. And, you know, I certainly do that with my team. And it helps in some ways, as the rec coaches, you have a lot more power over the whole experience, because I don't run my own practices. I have a trainer who's running the practices. I'm there, but I'm just shagging balls, you know. And sometimes, like Kris is saying, every once in a while they need a goalkeeper, and I'm like, it's me. I'll be the goalkeeper. But you can bring a little bit more consistency from the game experience to the practice experience, and that can be really key if you're like reinforcing those points and trying to weave threads, you know, throughout the whole season. That's, you know, that's really positive.
Bjorn, can I just add to that? I
Yeah.
would agree, like those, we just call them like challenges.
Yeah.
Like, what's your challenge for the game or the
Right.
practice? And that has been really key. I think even when things are going well, or when things aren't going that well,
Yeah.
that each kid is focusing on something, and also kind of, you know, they're learning a lot. So kind of centering them in on something has been key. And sometimes I allow, like at the beginning of a game, I would say like, all right, the 3 challenges today that you're going to get to choose from. One's taking a shot on goal, one's making a pass on offense, one's stealing the ball from someone on defense. Like, which one do you want to work on today?
Yeah.
So sort of giving them that agency. It also can involve the kids on the sideline. So if you're like, we want 5 steals from the team in this half. And then it gives them something to do. You got to watch for it. Did you see one? Did we get one? How many do we have? They care about counting things. So even if they can't be counting goals, and then that is the one thing I do sort of correct. Almost all the kids will say, I want to score a goal. I'll be like, there's so many things involved in scoring a goal, but what do you have to do to be able to score a goal? Like, we have to shoot, and that's something that you can control, is taking a shot. Like, it may or may not go in, but you can take a shot. And my daughter taught me something early on in the season. I was trying in one game, we were dominating by many goals, and I had started off by saying to a couple of my high scorers, your challenge is to shoot with your left foot, or your challenge is to pass. And my daughter came up to me and says, it makes me feel bad that they got a challenge and I didn't. And I was like, duh, right? So now I give everyone a challenge that works, either that they pick or that works for them and what they're working on. That has been much more successful, that they can focus on their growth and feel like I'm just as invested in them, and pushing them and their skills just like anyone else.
We in our league last season, we were probably ranked too low. And when you're competitive, you play in like gold or silver or bronze or copper. And my team played in bronze, but we ended up being like, we didn't know that the 5 players that I had come in were actually pretty good. And so we just weren't flighted correctly. And so we went 7-0-1 in league. And we're going to move up to the next division this next season. But the one draw was when I told my leading scorer he couldn't shoot, and then he just passed. But, you know, it's like, I'm trying to develop him as a player. I'm not necessarily looking for the win. And that's, you know, even when I'm talking, it was a lot of fun to win a lot of games, but we stopped learning things as a team when we started winning everything. And then we play harder teams, and all of a sudden the things that didn't work anymore. And that's where I encourage, you know, plays the toughest teams you can, because my team really did stop learning things when they were playing teams that they could easily beat. And you could see that. I could see like their development just sort of, you know, not get where it could be because it was too easy in some ways. That's not the season we had the year before. The year before we won 2 games. So, you know, I've had both sides of that, you know. So the last thing that I have is just a simple thing from my own life, which is I grew up in a very, very small town in Northern California. Soccer was a thing that we had one team on. Anyone who wanted to do it could do it. My dad was the coach, I'm sure, because no one else, you know, raised their hand. He knew nothing about soccer, still doesn't. Yeah, but I have a friend who still calls him coach. You know, my dad's 80 and he still calls him coach. And, you know, that's the kind of impact that you can have on some of these kids' lives, is that they're going to remember you like forever. And you have a chance to have a mark on their lives, you know, forever, something that's really going to endure if you create a good environment for them. I've also had coaches that ruined sports for me. Baseball was ruined by a bad coach. Football was ruined by a bad coach for me. But I loved basketball because I had good coaches who, you know, nurtured my development and cared about me as a person. And that's kind of what we get have the opportunity to do. I feel like it's been an absolute joy in my life to help sort of, you know, grow these kids and to watch that growth, and also, you know, to be a center of these families too. I mean, it's not just the kids. You don't just get the kids when you're coaching. You know, you get the families and you get to know them, and you get, you know, I love the families on my team. You know, it's a joy when we get to hang out. And you know, it's a kind of special place when you're the coach. You're the center of that. Well, my wife is my manager, and she's maybe also she might be the center as well. Yeah, I don't know if Kris or David, if you have any last thoughts, or if there are any questions that you might have, any of the few people that are on the call might have.
Yeah, I would just say, Bjorn, I had like a similar memory. My dad, who was a tennis player, an athlete, but knew nothing about soccer, was an assistant coach for my team when I was 8. And it's still one of the fondest. I have no idea what else happened. I remember the head coach. Yeah. And I remember our team name. I don't remember anything else, but it's one of the fondest memories of just having that season, and he was there. And I could tell that the coach, that he was having a good time, right? Yeah. It was fun. And the main coach owned a Pizza Hut or something, a straw hat. So we had a cool party, or a couple of cool parties, but I told my team that this season, like, I'll always, you know, remember that. And I told my dad, like, I still remember that, all those years of soccer. And that's one that stands out for me because you were a coach. Yeah. So I do think there's power in that, of just sort of investing in your kid, investing in other kids in that way. And it's really fun. And it does take time, but it's worth, you know, I think it's like many things, the more you invest, the more you get out of it, the more the kids are getting out of it. And it's worth the time for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. David, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I just enjoy the whole community involvement in serving, you know, the families that commit to the sport and to the game. And it's just great seeing the growth and the camaraderie amongst everybody, and the familiar faces returning year after year. And you know, coaching is it's fantastic. At any level, it's just fantastic to help others achieve their goals.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any questions? Or have we convinced you to coach one of your kids' teams?
First of all, I played soccer I started as a middle schooler, as an 8th grader. and played through high school. And it was like I loved it. I had a lot of fun. And so I have some soccer experience, although the idea of like, okay, being in charge of like running a practice and, you know, like you said, there's a fair amount of, you know, you can look up stuff. I even have a book of like, I don't know where I picked up, like soccer fundamentals, how to do stuff.
Yeah.
But as a busy person, right, trying to be how you talk about like the time spent in just thinking about the practices and thinking about, you know, how you want to organize the games and stuff. How, like, just ballpark, how much time do you think you spend thinking soccer and like practices? And also because we have 3 kids, right? And thinking like, okay, how can, if my husband, if I kind of want to rope in my husband to do coaching too, I'm like, if each of us is coaching one of our kids' teams, and then we have a 3rd kid who's also playing, I think that's part of my juggling too. Like if I'm dropping off kids at different practices and I'm not coaching, I can kind of do that. But now we've got like a, you know, kind of how do we manage that? And how do you know, I'm sure we're not the only family that has multiple kids playing. And so I'm just kind of curious, like in terms of organization and like support for families who are trying to juggle a lot of people. Time and organization. Yeah, I guess those would be 2 barriers for us, I think.
I'll take a stab
Yeah,
at
go
it.
for it.
And then anyone else can jump in. I mean, I wish I could say like, oh, there's this easy way to do it and it all magically comes together. No, I definitely, it takes the family and your kids too. I think that's the thing, being a coach. I don't want to say string because that sounds so negative, but like it takes everyone kind of figuring out, you know, we have to be at practice early. I got to pull you out of your after school care that you like early because we need to be on time to welcome all the other families. My husband then needs to be taking my other kid to his practices and his different sports. It's a little bit of a juggle. I would say if you can, then have an assistant coach or sort of demand that someone step up in a more of like a manager type role. That's really helpful because if it is you and your partner both leading the same team, that will be hard. We definitely have to divide and conquer a little bit on, you know, the weekends and the practice nights. So I think, you know, tapping your team for who can organize the snack schedule, who can like step up and do this. And like, I've gotten better about saying, here's the role I need someone to help with. And even if it's not the assistant coach, like our job is to really invest in those kids during the practice and game time. So I would say like, that's the most valuable time that you can spend because it's actually with the kids. While I prepare, because that's how I feel better. It's really that time with the kids that is so important. So, you know, the night before the game, I don't do like Bjorn's got his printout, you know, I do it in a pencil. I've got a paper and a pencil and I'm ready to erase the next morning when someone doesn't show, and I'm doing my best. I looked the last couple weeks of my paper and I'm trying to sketch it out. Like that's wow.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm trying to not overdo it again on skills to teach. And really it's one practice a week that we're really managing and structuring ourselves. And one that's usually the challenger or the professional coach. And so you have to be there, but you don't have to plan for that one. So, you know, I think trying to keep it somewhat simple and just kind of see how it goes is helpful. But I think maybe also we could probably be more helpful as a, actually, I think Stephanie, who's on the call in the past, I know she sent like a template for the email that goes out to parents at the beginning, right? So you're not thinking of everything yourself. You might be filling in a few details that matter to you and how you want to do things. But to like, we can borrow sort of and use those templates. The Team Snap, hey Stephanie, the Team Snap app is helpful because then it has a chat function and the game scheduling is all together. So I definitely think it's doable, but it's a lot. I just kind of think of it as my like a part-time gig during the season, an enjoyable one, but like I think of it as a part-time gig, and I'm not taking on other things during that time. I'm not doing other volunteer work during that. Like this is my service to the community. This is a form of quality time for my kid.
Yeah.
and kind of approach it that way too. And it really turns out, I guess it's like what, 2.5 months that, you know, it kind of goes by fast once you get into it.
Yeah.
It goes by pretty quickly.
Yep. Yeah, I would say like the first couple of weeks, just getting all the credentials to be qualified to coach takes the most energy before the season starts. And then once you have that done and you understand the basics of the safety and logistics of the club, it's about, you know, it's about 5 hours a week of time, maybe 6, when you understand the logistics and the communication needs for the club and the team. And that's over a 10 to 12 week period, depending. So that's, you know, that's what I've kept track of, because, you know, in my profession, it's all about safety, logistics, and schedule. And I keep track of my time with everything I do, and it drives people crazy.
On the comp side, you know, I have my wife as the manager. And so she handles a lot of the logistics, which is super helpful. But I attend the practices. I don't plan them because those are run by the professional coaches. But I'm the head coach for the games, and we have more games and our season's a little bit longer. I spend too much time doing it because I've become obsessed with it. And that is a thing that can happen. But it doesn't have to. I mean, you don't have to be obsessed to do this. But, you know, we've like on practice days, I'm the cook in the house. So I do crock pot meals on practice days so that we can all come home and have a hot dinner. And some things that are changing in the club too, there really are going to be more supports going forward. So the new DOC is planning on more supports as I understand it, doubling the amount of professional coach time that is devoted to rec to help. And so I think that's going to be positive. He has things that the director of coaching has things like lesson plans. He has templates for sessions, like a lot of them. He's very into it. He has a lot of these things. So there are resources that are there. I don't think that right now that there aren't a lot of bright neon signs pointing to where all the resources are, but that's something that we're trying to change. And it's going to be something that I'm working on this season as well, to make sure that coaches know how to access the resources. And I'm also going to be checking in with all the coaches to see how things are going. Because asking at the end of the season in a survey that isn't as helpful as finding out that you have a problem now. And so that's kind of what I want to do, is find out if you have a problem, or if there's something that we can address, or if there's a challenge you're facing, or whatever it is. Because, you know, the parent volunteers make the rec program work. There is no rec program without parent coaches. And you know, that's a huge part of the program. And it's a huge part of getting kids playing a beautiful game. So we want to encourage you to be a coach, but we also want to support you in that. So that's the plan as we head into the spring and moving forward. Stephanie, yeah.
Oh, sorry, can I just add to that? So is it Yana? Am I saying that right?
Well, that would be proper. But I go with Jana.
Yeah. Okay.
Jana. Yeah. So Jana is very like proper for the German name. So.
Oh, nice. Okay. I thought I heard that earlier on, so I just wanted to. So
I probably said it because I didn't know. Like because you're doing better.
So, okay. So Jana, I would just like put in the plug of like I personally, the league, we need more female coaches. I really want to push hard on that. I would like put in the plug for like you being the coach and your husband being the helper role, or, you know, like I think what we see is that lots of women and moms are helpful and wanting to help out, but are kind of like, I don't have the time, or I don't have the ability, or I don't have the background to be the coach. I'll do I'll coordinate the party at the end. I'll coordinate the snacks, like super helpful, and which is great. We need all of that. But want to sort of really see what can we do to make it happen for busy parents, of course, but like busy moms in particular, to like start changing the character of the club. I don't know. I'm guessing right now, Stephanie, Bjorn, like maybe we have 1 out of 5 coaches ish that are women. I mean, it kind of probably goes maybe a little harder, 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5. I'd love to see that go up. And Bjorn, you'll be pleased to hear, like, there's a female coach that I met at the coach meeting back in August. She actually reached out to me today. We've been talking about.
I gave her your email.
Yeah. So thank you. Just like even having an informal group of female identifying coaches, if it's an email thread or getting together every once in a while, or getting together at the trainings to like support each other as moms, and like the ways that we may show up in our families, and what that means for showing up as coaches. So I just think we're trying to build that up and make it a more attractive, doable role, and just feel like we're amongst good company to do that. So really would welcome you to take the leap if you feel like you can, and and make it work and support each other in figuring out kind of the best practices for how we do this and manage our families and all the things that come along with that.
So
I wanted to ask another question too, real quick, which was, a couple of you guys have talked about having like the same kids year after year. And I would say that when we moved here, we started playing, I think, fall of 2018. And every kid, except for like the COVID year, they've been on different teams. We've never had the same coach. We've hardly ever had the same teammates. And so I'm just kind of curious. I at one point got the impression that maybe the point was to always mix it up so that you were getting to play with different people. So I don't know if it's just random luck, but it's been kind of an interesting soccer experience for my family anyway. Well, we had occasionally, like, there'd be, oh yeah, that kid was on my team 2 years ago or something, but we have not had we haven't had that kind of consistency. So I was just kind of curious about that.
Yes.
I can speak to that if you want me to. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So usually the age group coordinator. So what we go by is we don't have last season's rosters unless a coach has come forward and handed off a roster and said, I want to keep these kids together. So what we go by is just what's on the registration. If a parent has requested that they stay with the same coach, then we'll honor that. If they want to play with a certain teammate, we honor that as well. But if there isn't anything there, we try to link kids up with this in the same schools. And that's pretty much what we go on. But the COVID years were strange. It was, we didn't have a lot of kids. And so things were a little different. But I think now I feel like, more kids are coming back. The same kids are returning. And it seems like, teams are sticking together more and more. What happens though in spring is that there's more activities out there, other sports being played. And so you'll find that kids won't play in the spring. Usually in the younger ages, they'll do other things. And sometimes as they get older, they decide they want to be, soccer full time. And so then you'll find them in the fall and the spring. But yes, teams tend to break up in the spring and then come back together in the fall. So it could just be like that.
That helps. I was curious about that. So thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Feel free, Jana, to say if you're going to be the coach and you have a couple of your kids' friends that are going to play, just say I'm a coach, request me. You put my name and put my kid's name in your buddy request and coach request. And so I will say that to the kid. I say that to all my families. I'd love to have you back. You put these names in the request. They can't pair you with me unless you do that. And I understand if you either are doing other activities or you just want a new experience, no problem, right? Because you don't want someone to feel like I've got to stick with this team now. Maybe it wasn't as great of experience. Maybe they have a school friend who was on another team, to make that, I welcome you back, and you just put it in the sign up form, and that's always been honored in my experience. But it can also be good to have different coaches and to have different kind of friends and dynamics. And so that's not necessarily a bad thing. But if you're wanting to do this for the first time and kind of wanting to ensure like an even more positive experience for yourself. And you're like, oh, here are like 3 great kids that I like, and I like their parents. This would be a nice starting point. Like, go for it. Like, let them know to put your name down.
Great.
Oh,
All right.
and also I just wanted to say that depending on the age group of, whichever of the 3 children you're going to, want to coach, we have help. So starting at U7, there's trainings with the professional coaches. U7 has 1 training a week with a professional coach, and that's actually the only practice that they have. And then and coaches will run the games on the weekends. U8 also has 1 training with the coach, and then 1 training with the professional coach also. So, but the thing is, what's nice about the professional coach trainings is that you learn from them. So they'll run the training. You can copy what they do at your next coach training. They'll also send weekly like a weekly message out about what they're going to be doing this week in training. And it's a guideline to help you with your training as well. And anyway, then while you're with them once a week, you can ask questions of them and they offer suggestions. It's just nice to have that contact, that in-person contact. So we offer that for U7 through U10. So that's, 4 years, 8 seasons, which is super helpful.
Yeah.
I don't know how long this meeting was supposed to go, but if I have more questions, who is there's somebody I should can I talk to ask more questions?
Yeah. So certainly you can send them to me, because I'm the new coach coordinator, and so I can pair you with information. But I would think that Kris would also be very interested in being a resource for you. And the Lucas is going to be transitioning out, but there'll be someone else in that role going forward, and then that person would become a resource. And then we're working on just creating more community amongst coaches in general, so that you can ask a question of all of. There's Kris's email in the chat. Grab it. So yeah, the idea is to not let you twist in the wind. We really want to provide resources and support for the coaches, so it's a good experience for you, so it's a good experience for the kids, so you come back and so they come back.
When is everything sort of kicking off for this year?
So the practices will begin the week of March 20th, and then the first games it's the first weekend of April, so it's April 1st. Yeah, Saturday, Sunday.
You want coach commitment by yesterday.
Registration closes on February 17th, and we'll start forming teams. I think I just got the email from Jack London today. I think I have to have teams formed by March 1st. That's their ideal. But I'm training a bunch of new age group coordinators, and we'll do our best. So, but yeah,
there's coach training. I know, I think it was David mentioned the credentials and things like that. When does that start? As far as just thinking, okay, how's, if we are going to jump in, how soon do we need to be making sure we've made that decision, and who do we talk to?
And those are all online. Okay. So there's a safe sport, and it's none of that is too burdensome. It does take some time. There's 2 or 3 modules you have to go through.
The background checks and the live scan, it all takes a bit of time.
There'll be a coach meeting where there'll be a positive coaching alliance session, which I actually found very helpful, and sort of a kickoff about more of the logistics about practice fields and sessions and uniforms and things like that. But and that'll be before the season starts. But you'll be able to, usually we do live scans there, or we have done in the past, right?
I think the live scans are being done online these days.
Oh,
So I think you can
Yeah,
actually do it from home. Yeah, I don't think we're doing the fingerprinting thing anymore.
I had to do the fingerprint back in the summer, and then unless that's changed since then.
I think just this past fall, we were just doing it online. But that would be, I could ask the registrar. That's a question for Winona. Yeah.
So it's not too burdensome. And there's no test about, which is the best formation or something like that. It's usually about what are your obligations as a mandated reporter, and what do you do if you suspect abuse in some way. It's really those things that are involved in getting certified to be a coach.
I'm assuming even if you've done those elsewhere, you still have to do it here, right?
Probably because
Yes.
it's all
Yes.
within the only exception would be if you've done it within that system, with the safe sports system, and then that stuff is, you have to renew that either every year or every other year. So you're always kind of having to go in and do that, but it's maybe 2 hours of online, watch the video, answer the quiz. It's not too burdensome. It is something you have to do, but it's not.
Might be a little more than that, I think.
Is it?
Yeah, I think by the time you get through all the modules, there's like a concussion one, and
There is a concussion one.
however, I would say, because now I'm volunteering as a basketball coach, there's, even though when you're going through like, oh, another thing, but in terms of like being a parent in the league, it actually makes me feel more confident of like, oh, at least our league, ASC, has more obligations than that, but it's like to keep kids safe. So I appreciate that as a parent, even when you got to put in the extra time, but online, to get ready to go. So I'd say, the sooner you make your decision, the better, so you can get maybe the coach request, but also just got those things rolling, because by the time it's like choosing your practice field and time, that will also take time. So if you're kind of those obligations are covered beforehand, that'll help you. So you're not really like doing all of that all at the same time. It would feel like a lot.
That was another, I guess coach practices and things like that. So if you're coaching, do you get some say then in like where and when you practice and how that works?
It's your choice.
Some say, not complete, but yes, because we're all not competing. But there's only a certain number of fields and a certain number of times available. But yes, we sign up on like a spreadsheet to try to figure out where you're going to be and when.
And are the kids still divided up by birth year, which I realize kind of means that oftentimes kids in same grade are in different years?
So we do, that was all switched, I believe, actually this last fall. So now up until U14, it's done by school year, or, grade, school grade. And then once you hit U14, then it becomes, year of birth. So so U6 is kindergarten, U7 first grade, and so on and so forth. So that's how it goes.
So my son can't play with his best friends because he has a December 20th birthday. And so, he's in the comp program, it's by birth year. And so, if he's going to play with his friends, then he'd have to actually play rec. So you have some advantage there in the rec program because of that. Great.
Thanks.
Well, so I'm gonna stop recording now.